Babylon refuses to mourn, but my people will mourn before I return. This is what I heard just in my spirit. In 2004, I was a young man seeking God, asking Him, what do you want me to do with my life? And I heard this phrase, and it was this phrase that really led to the 10 days, sort of a kind of a cryptic phrase. In fact, I was sharing this story with a friend of mine who knew about 10 days but didn't know about this, and he said, I didn't get the whole apocalyptic aspect of 10 days. And he was kind of joking but kind of serious. And it's true. I mean, the phrase is taken from Revelation chapter 18. It's a paraphrase of something that happens there. But I'm here with my friend Gregg Healey, and we're just going to be talking a little bit about this. What does it mean for God's people to mourn? What is this Babylon thing? So Gregg, tell me about, I know when we met, we kind of started talking about this right at the front end.
You heard that originally that phrase in 2004, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So you and I met in 2010, and I had been going through a season of really deepening my walk and seeking God about what are you doing in these days, and personally going through a time of cleansing and going through a prophetic journey, a part of what God was doing with me. But I really had a keenness and an awareness of Revelations 18 and the times that we are living in, and what symbolically Babylon is meant by in those scriptures. Like, what is this Babylon, and why does Babylon refuse to mourn? So when we met, it was like a real touchstone for me. Like, well, what do you know about this? Because I'm really interested in it, because God's really interested in it.
Right. So what does Babylon represent? I mean, there's probably a lot of different interpretations, but what does it represent to you? How do you understand it?
Yeah, so like biblically, Babylon's a lot of different things. Back in Genesis, the Tower of Babel was kind of the beginning of it, and then there's the historic Babylon with Nebuchadnezzar and the golden statue and all that. But to me, the thing that really is important is to remember what Revelation says, which is Babylon is a symbolic name for the harlot of Babylon, which speaks to all of worldliness, I think, separate from God. So man in man's vision and dream of things without God is Babylon, symbolically. And so Revelations 18 uses this imagery, though, of commerce and the markets for fine goods and luxury things, and in a lot of ways represents our current economy or our global market economy. And so yet here's God judging it. Why? So what's the problem with that, and why? And it talks about how those merchants were mourning. Do you remember?
Yeah, absolutely.
They were really mourning in the fire and destruction of this symbolic city called Babylon, which is really the ultimate destination, right, for man apart from God. Whatever culture gets developed from that is not going to last, and God is going to have His say.
How can you be so sure about that? What's wrong with doing things apart from God? Or because I completely agree with you. I think Babylon represents, a city. It's the city. It's everything we try to do, not based on what God says. It's building our houses on the sand. But why are you so confident that it's not going to last?
Well, I think if God is the creator of all things, and He's therefore the judge of all things, something that's not good or evil, which clearly the symbolism of a harlot, right, a prostitute, is not a good thing, selling yourself for money, that God has the last say, and are we in the last days, I guess is what we could ask. And we're clearly told this scripturally, that these times are coming. So are these times upon us, and what does that look like? And I think this turn of phrase that you heard, which isn't quite a quote of Revelation 18, Babylon refuses to mourn. The harlot is spoken of refusing to mourn.
Right. She says, I'll never see mourning.
The devil behind the harlot will never mourn. He has his eternal destiny sealed. But people have a choice. But my people will mourn. So we look at those merchants mourning, and we also know that part of mourning is a longing for the Lord.
Right.
In the depravity of what is going on with Babylon, we long for justice and righteousness to come through the Lord. And so I think that can't last if justice and righteousness must come. And I think that is, there's much more than that there, and it's a deeper discussion, but the essence of it is that God's justice and judgment to bring righteousness and justice.
Right. There's an interesting thing earlier in the passage where God, or I can't remember if it's God himself or an angel speaking, but there's this thing, come out from her. Like,
yes.
Come out from her, my people.
Exactly.
So that you're not touched by her judgment. So there's this sense of, okay, there's this world system that's going down. It's drunk on the blood of the saints. It's operating in its own strength. It's basically like, God, we don't need you. We've got it. Our system that we've built is good. It's going to keep going. It's going to sustain us, keep us rich.
It's back to the Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel was, let's be like God. Let's build this tower to the heavens and be like God. Right. That's the absence of God.
Right. And here God is saying, okay, I want you to come out from her.
Yeah, so he's saying, like, all mixed together is not going to work in the long run. My people, come out from that sin, come out from that lifestyle, come out from that way, which I think it's an interesting thing, because when you think about, like, well, what does symbolically Babylon look like today? Is it Saddam Hussein and sort of the old rubble of Babylon, like proper in that geography, or is it really emblematic of what's happening in the evil that's coming in culture? And can we be integrated with that if it's going to be judged? And I think the biblical pattern is always for God's people to separate themselves from evil. And we will be protected in the bosom of God as a result.
Right. So God's encouraging us to come out from that. And 10 days, I think, is an opportunity for people to do that. But what does that look like as we begin to come out from the system? What does that even look like?
I think it's the first thing is to realize that there's a problem. Like that being plugged into everything that goes on in the 21st century may or may not be a good thing. And what is an evil system? What is part of Babylon and what is not? What was the original intent of God with man? What was the original intent of even our nation under God? Mm-hmm. And what does it look like today? And so it's firstly, am I entangled in any way? Do I need to do anything? Like, is there any step I need to take? I think you can't discover or detect that, to discern that, without spending time away from things,
right.
The noise of the world around us, to seek God's face. That allows us to sort of take some distance and reflection, and we can wonder, what is that? And should we be coming out of it or separating ourselves from it? And it's not a utopian society necessarily that we would see being formed like in this bubble.
So what I was going to say is that actually Greg and I are starting a little society, and we'd like you to join us. And
we'll just go down to South America, and we have some Kool-Aid for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kool-Aid is on the menu. We're just going to kind of get away. We're going to come out from Babylon and chill.
It is really not like that at all. It's a being separate and apart from the way that the world might act, or other people unified in the interests of apart from God, evil interests.
Right.
It's saying, I refuse to go along with that. I refuse to just say, well, that's just the way life is, so there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to be like everybody else. It's the peer pressure to conform to whatever is going on in the world around us. We can literally be physically in our nation, in our land, but yet have a heart that is apart from doing evil, and those systems that are doing evil.
So the coming out is a matter of the heart, and then part of the goal of just getting away for a time is so that we can have some distance between, to discern, okay, where is my heart pursuing this Babylon system, this city that's only based on man, and where is my heart pursuing God, and really beginning to let our lives run in the course of pursuing God. I think of Daniel as someone who exemplified that, living literally in the midst of Babylon.
Yeah, and I think that if you want to make it practical and understand what might this be, or what's a tangible example of that, I think the whole issue of who provides for you and your family is a critical aspect of, do I depend on the world's systems, jobs, and income, and taking things into my own hands to take care of myself and my family? Or am I truly dependent on God? And can I live and be sustained even if I don't have those things? Can God do it in the way He might desire to do it? And so I think that gets entangled in our daily affairs because we're just trying to get by, right? We're trying to survive. We're trying to, put our best foot forward and do what we have to do to take care of our family. But if we really think about it and we had to make a choice, who would we depend on?
Right.
Would we depend on the world and its monetary systems, or would we depend truly on God?
Right. That reminds me of what Jesus said, no one can serve two masters. Right. And from our human perspective, sometimes it's hard to tell because we're just going about our business, we're doing things. But taking a step back to really ask, okay, God, who am I serving here? Am I serving you? Am I serving money? What's my foundation like? Is it built on something solid? Is it deep? Is it on a rock? Or is it built on sand? I think that's the advantage of taking these times back. It allows us to mourn in the sense of both longing for the kingdom of God, but also recognizing where we may have built on sand and not even realized it. Right. Now you got to rebuild. I mean, there's some mourning that happens there as well. Absolutely. And coming to build, but it's good because it's like realizing you made a mistake. Oh, great! Now I can fix it. There's still time. So that's what we hope to see happen during the 10 days this fall. Is for people to have time apart, to open themselves up to just the leading of the Holy Spirit, to take stock of what's going on in their lives. Where have I built wisely? Where have I built on sand? And really, ultimately, to be established on the rock, on the sayings and teachings and person of Jesus Christ. We want to stand together, even in the midst of the worst storms that might come. So we hope you'll take this time this fall, the 10 days from September 24th to October 4th, to seek God's face, just in order to come into greater knowledge of who He is.